I've been invisible for 8 months. That's the truth of working in a house like Jae-won Park's. You learn to move through rooms like a ghost, present but overlooked. My hands polish surfaces that gleam beneath crystal chandeliers I could never afford, fold towels softer than anything I've ever slept on, and arrange orchids that cost more than my weekly groceries. The penthouse sprawls across the top 3 floors of a Manhattan high-rise, all clean lines and dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook a city I can barely afford to live in. I know things working here, not because anyone tells me, but because silence is the best cover for observation. I know which men arrive with hard eyes and leave with harder expressions. I know which meetings happen in the soundproofed room of the main study. I know the weight of conversations that stop when I enter, the careful way staff members avoid citing questions. And I know better than to care. Curiosity in a house like this can get you killed. Jae-won Park himself is a presence I've learned to sense before I see. I hear the elevator chime, always the private one, and know to be elsewhere. I catch glimpses of him through doorways, black hair swept back from a sharp face, suits that fit like they were sewn onto him, and eyes dark as ink that slide right past me. He holds meetings in his study with men who speak rapid Korean and leave through service entrances. I clean up after them, empty crystal ashtrays, collect forgotten glasses still clouded with soju. He's 34 years old. I learned that from overhearing staff conversations, and has been running this organization since his father was killed in a power struggle 12 years ago. The way people speak about him, in hushed tones and careful euphemisms, paints a picture of a man who earned his throne through blood and strategy in equal measure. I don't ask questions. That's not my job. My job is to disappear. The only constant in this carefully ordered existence is my sister Destiny. She works in the kitchen, 24 years old with our grandmother's bright smile and none of my caution. She creates dishes that blend Korean and Southern influences, kimchi colored greens that would make our grandmother proud. And every evening when our shifts end, we ride the subway back to our cramped apartment in Washington Heights together. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, neighbors who argue at 3 a.m., but it's ours. Well, rented, barely afforded. I work the extra shifts when they are offered because I need every dollar. Because $6,000 to $3,000 in medical debt doesn't disappear on its own. Because my grandmother raised us after our parents died, and the cancer ate through her body and our savings simultaneously, and the bills kept coming long after her funeral. I signed payment plans I'll be honoring into my 40s, accepted interest rates that should be criminal, and learned to survive on instant noodles and cheaper hope. So I clean, I fold, I polish, I accept overtime without complaint. Thursday night, the antique clock in the main hall chimes 10 times as I finish wiping down the kitchen counters. My shoulders ache from scrubbing tile grout in the 3rd-floor bathroom, and my lower back protests when I bend to collect my cleaning caddy. October in New York means darkness falls early, and through the tall windows, I watch rain begin to streak the glass. You heading out? Destiny appears from the pantry, pulling on her jacket. She smells like gochujang and garlic from whatever fusion dish she'd prepared for Jae-won's dinner. Yeah, long day. She studies my face with the particular intensity only siblings can manage. You look exhausted, and your edges are fuzzy. Come here. She pulls out a small tin of edge control from her bag, smoothing down my hairline with practice fingers. You can't keep doing doubles forever. I'm fine. You always say that. She links her arm through mine as we walk toward the service entrance. Movie night this weekend? I'll make Grandma's sweet potato pie. If I'm not working. Maya. Her voice carries gentle reproach. But I have to. The next payment is due in 2 weeks, and I'm short by $400. Outside, the rain has graduated from drizzle to downpour. We huddle under the small awning by the service door, and Destiny pulls out her phone to check the subway status. Train's running on time, ready to make a run for it. 3 blocks. That's all it is. 3 blocks from the Park penthouse building to the 168th Street station. We've walked it hundreds of times, usually together, sometimes alone when our shifts don't align. The neighborhood is supposed to be safe. This is Jae-won's territory after all, and I've heard the whispers about what that means. Protection, order, rules enforced by men with hard eyes. Tonight, Destiny got a text from her boyfriend before we left. Some emergency with his mother that had her swearing under her breath and apologizing profusely. Go, I told her. I'll be fine. You sure? It's 3 blocks. She kissed my cheek and ran toward the garage where she'd parked her ancient Honda. I watched her taillights disappear around the corner, then pulled my hood up against the rain and started walking. The street was quieter than usual. Most storefronts had already closed, their windows dark except for security lights that cast everything in shades of amber and shadow. My sneakers splashed through puddles, soaking through to my socks within half a block. I kept my head down, focused on the familiar route, counting the shops I passed like prayer beads. The Korean restaurant, the dry cleaner, the pharmacy with the flickering neon sign. 2 blocks down. 1 to go. The alley appeared on my left, narrow and dark, between 2 buildings. I had passed it 1,000 times without a thought. But tonight, 2 figures stepped out from the shadows, blocking the sidewalk ahead. I stopped, heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. Evening, one of them said. White guy, maybe 30, with a shaved head and a jacket that looked too thin for the weather. His companion was taller, broader, silent. Evening, I managed, moving to step around them. The first man shifted, staying in my path. Were you headed in such a hurry? Home. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Excuse me. Hold on now. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Just being neighborly, making conversation. The taller one moved behind me, cutting off retreat. My stomach dropped. I don't want trouble, I said. No trouble. The first man held up his hands, palms out. Just need your bag. And that phone in your pocket. Nice and easy. My mind raced through options. Scream. But who would hear over the rain? Run, but where? Fight against 2 men twice my size? I pulled my crossbody bag over my head with shaking hands and held it out. He took it, rifled through quickly, pocketed my wallet. Then he looked at me expectantly. Phone. I reached into my jacket, fingers numb, and handed over my cell. My lifeline. My alarm clock. My connection to destiny. Good girl. He examined the phone, then his eyes landed on my shirt. My cleaning uniform, visible where my jacket hung open. Simple gray polo with the building's discreet logo embroidered on the chest. Wait a second. He stepped closer, rain plastering his face. You work at that building, the tower on the corner. Fear spiked cold through my veins. No, don't lie. He grabbed my collar, yanking me forward. I seen that logo before. You work for the Korean, don't you? I don't know what you're talking about. Bullshit. He looked at his companion. She works for Park. The taller man's expression changed. Something dark crossed his features. I'm just a cleaner, I said desperately. I don't know anything. I just clean houses. Please. Just a cleaner. The first man laughed, but it was ugly. Well, just a cleaner. You're going to deliver a message for us. The first punch came from nowhere, catching me across the cheekbone. Pain exploded white-hot behind my eyes, and I staggered backward. Before I could recover, hands grabbed my arms, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. I tried to scream, but a palm clamped over my mouth. This is what happens, the first man said close to my ear, when people think they own our streets. When they think some Korean gangster can tell us what to do. The second hit caught my ribs. Then another, and another. I stopped counting after the fourth. Stopped trying to fight, just curled inward and prayed for it to end. Someone grabbed my braids, yanked my head back, and I saw the first man's fist coming toward my face before everything went black. I don't know how long I was unconscious. Could have been seconds or minutes. When awareness returned, I was lying on wet pavement, rain drumming against my back. Every breath felt like knives in my side. My left eye wouldn't open properly, swollen and throbbing. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. They were gone. My bag, my phone, and my attackers all vanished into the October night. I pushed myself to sitting, biting back a sob as my ribs protested. My hands were scraped raw, my jeans torn at the knee. Through my one working eye, I could see the subway station ahead, its lights wavering through the rain. Get up. Move. Get home. I don't remember the walk clearly, just fragments. Stumbling through the turnstile, a woman's concerned face asking if I needed help, me shaking my head. The jarring motion of the train. Climbing the stairs to our apartment building felt like scaling a mountain. Our bathroom mirror told the story my body already knew. My left eye was swollen shut, purple spreading across the socket. My bottom lip was split and bleeding. When I lifted my shirt, bruises were already forming along my ribs in shades of red and purple. My arms bore the clear imprint of fingers where I'd been grabbed. I turned on the shower, letting it run hot, and sat on the bathroom floor fully clothed while steam filled the space. Only then did I let myself cry, quiet and controlled, so I wouldn't wake Destiny. But she woke anyway. Her bedroom door opened, footsteps approached, and then she was in the bathroom doorway, her face going pale. Maya. Oh my God, Maya. I'm okay. You're bleeding. We need to go to the hospital. No. Maya, I can't afford it. My voice broke. I can't afford the ER visit, Destiny. I can't. She crouched beside me, her hands hovering like she was afraid to touch me and cause more pain. What happened? Mugged. 2 guys. They took everything. Did you call the police? No phone, remember? I tried to smile, but my split lip made me wince. It's fine. I'll file a report tomorrow. Destiny's expression said she didn't believe any of this was fine, but she didn't argue. Instead, she helped me out of my wet clothes, steadied me as I showered, and wrapped my braids in a silk scarf for the night. When I finally crawled into bed, she sat beside me in the dark. I shouldn't have left you alone, she whispered. Not your fault. But as I lay there, every part of my body screaming, I couldn't stop replaying the moment the first man saw my uniform, the recognition in his eyes, the deliberate violence that followed. This wasn't random, and somehow that made it infinitely worse. Sleep came in fragments, broken by pain that pulsed through my ribs with every breath. When my alarm went off at 6, I lay there staring at the ceiling, contemplating the impossible mathematics of missing work. I needed every shift, every dollar. The medical bills didn't care if I'd been beaten half to death in an alley. $63,000. That number followed me like a shadow, constant and suffocating. Each month I chipped away at it. 300 here, 500 when I worked doubles, but the interest kept it alive, breathing, growing. Missing even one day meant falling further behind. I dragged myself upright, biting back a groan as my ribs protested. The bathroom mirror showed me exactly what I'd be working with. My left eye had transformed into a grotesque palette of purple and black, swollen enough that I could barely see through the slit. The cut on my lip had scabbed over during the night. Bruises bloomed across my jaw and cheekbone like violent flowers. Makeup became war paint. I layered concealer thick enough to pass for a mask, though it did little to hide the swelling. Foundation in 3 different shades to try to match what my deep brown skin used to look like. The eye was hopeless. No amount of product could disguise that damage. I settled for making the rest of my face look human and hoped people wouldn't look too closely. The long-sleeve shirt came out of necessity despite the October heat that had settled over the city. Gray charcoal, high-necked, covering every inch of damage I could hide. When I checked my reflection one final time, I looked like someone wearing a bad disguise of myself. Destiny was already in the kitchen when I emerged, and her face crumpled the moment she saw me. "Don't," I said before she could start. "I'm going to work." "Maya, you can barely walk." "I can walk fine." A lie. Every step sent shocks through my left side where they'd kicked me. And I need the money. One day won't. Yes, it will. I poured coffee into a travel mug, movements careful and deliberate. Payments due in 2 weeks. I'm already short 400. She opened her mouth, closed it. We both knew the math. Both lived inside the same impossible budget. "At least let me drive you," she said finally. I accepted because the subway stairs felt insurmountable this morning. The penthouse looked exactly as it always did. Beautiful, imposing, utterly indifferent to my suffering. Destiny dropped me at the service entrance with a look that said we'd be discussing this later, then headed to the kitchen. She'd be starting prep by now for whatever elaborate Korean breakfast Jae-won preferred on Fridays. I made it through the morning on autopilot, dust the library, vacuum the second-floor hallway, change linens in the guest rooms. Each task required focus to complete without aggravating my injuries. I moved slowly, methodically, and avoided every reflective surface I passed. Around noon, Destiny found me folding towels in the linen closet. "You look awful," she said bluntly. "Thanks. I'm serious. Your face is twice its normal size." "It's fine." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Did you at least file a police report?" "I will. After work." Another lie. What would I tell them? That I got mugged and the attackers mentioned my employer? That felt dangerous in ways I couldn't articulate. "Maya, I need to finish the 3rd floor." I picked up my caddy of cleaning supplies, using it as a shield. "Mr. Park has people coming this afternoon. Everything needs to be perfect." Destiny's expression suggested she had more to say, but she let me go. I climbed the stairs slowly, grateful for the emptiness of the upper floors where no one would see me struggle. Jae-won's study was last on my list. He typically spent afternoons in meetings downtown, leaving his private space empty until evening. I knocked twice out of habit, got no response, and let myself in. The room smelled of leather and old paper, with undertones of the pine tea he drank and the faint sweetness of tobacco from the traditional pipe he smoked on the terrace. His desk dominated the space, dark wood polished to a mirror shine, papers arranged in precise stacks. I had learned his system over months of cleaning. Never move the papers, just dust around them. Never touch the laptop. The JT set got hand-washed and replaced exactly where it had been. I was wiping down the windowsill, back to the door when I heard it. Footsteps. My heart jumped stupidly. Rabbit-quick panic before logic reasserted itself. Just another employee. The housekeeper. Sung-ho checking if I needed anything. But when I turned, Jae-won Park stood in the doorway. He'd removed his suit jacket, rolled his shirt sleeves to his elbows. Black hair, slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. And his eyes, those dark, unreadable eyes I'd seen 100 times from a distance, were fixed directly on me, actually seeing me, not through me. "Sorry, Mr. Park." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I thought you were out this afternoon. I can come back. What happened to your face?" The question landed like a physical blow. Direct, unavoidable. His English was flawless, touched only faintly with an accent that made certain consonants sharper. I fell. The lie I'd practiced. Subway stairs. They get slippery when it rains. He didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides, and before I could retreat, his hand caught my chin, tilting my face toward the light from the window. I flinched, couldn't help it. His touch was careful but firm, professional almost, as he examined the damage. Up close, I could see details I'd never noticed from a distance. A thin scar along his jawline, the slight crook in his nose that suggested it had been broken once, and his eyes, dark as obsidian, held something that looked almost like concern. "You didn't fall," he said quietly. "This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate." My throat tightened. Who did this? I should have kept lying, should have maintained the fiction and gotten out of this room as fast as possible. Instead, maybe because of the exhaustion or the pain or the way he was looking at me like my answer actually mattered, the truth slipped out. I don't know. 2 men. Last night. They took my bag, my phone. Then they saw my uniform and I stopped, unable to finish. Jae-won's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Something cold and calculating. "They targeted you because you work here." They said something about sending a message, about showing that you don't own their streets. His jaw tightened. A muscle ticked in his cheek. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared at me like he was memorizing every bruise, every cut, every piece of evidence written on my face. "Sun-ho," he said finally, not raising his voice. A man appeared in the doorway almost instantly, tall, broad-shouldered, with the watchful stillness of someone trained to see threats before they materialized. Yes. Jae-won released my chin, stepped back. "Get Dr. Kim. Now." The Korean was rapid, clipped. Sun-ho's eyes flicked to me, widened slightly, then he was gone. "You don't need to," I started. "Sit." His tone left no room for argument. He gestured to the leather chair in front of his desk. "Sit down before you fall down." I sat, mostly because my legs were shaking and the adrenaline that had carried me through the morning was crashing hard. Jae-won moved to a cabinet in the corner, returned with a crystal tumbler of something amber. He pressed it into my hands. "Drink." Slowly. I obeyed without thinking. The whiskey burned going down, but steadied something inside me. Jae-won sat on the edge of his desk, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. The position felt strange, intimate, somehow, despite the circumstances. "Tell me everything," he said. "Every detail you remember." I did. The street, the alley, the 2 men. Their faces, what they said, how the first punch felt, the moment I blacked out. Jae-won listened without interrupting, his expression carved from stone. Only his eyes moved, tracking my face like he was cataloging each wound. When I finished, silence stretched between us. "Then, you came to work today. After this." It wasn't a question. "I need the hours." "You need a hospital." "I can't afford." His hand cut through the air, silencing me. "You think I would let someone on my staff avoid medical care because of money?" Staff. Of course. I was staff. An employee whose injury reflected badly on his territory, his control. Something in my face must have shown my thoughts, because his expression softened almost imperceptibly. "That's not what I meant." He paused, seeming to search for words. "You've worked here 8 months. Never called in sick. Never complained about overtime. Never asked for anything beyond your paycheck." He tilted his head, studying me. "Why?" "Because I need the money. The overtime. Most people do the minimum. You do everything." I debated lying, then decided he probably already knew anyway. Medical debt. My grandmother died 2 years ago. Cancer. The bills didn't stop with her. Understanding flickered across his features. "How much?" "That's not your concern." "How much, Maya?" The use of my name. My first name. He'd never called me anything but Miss Williams in 8 months of passing each other in hallways. 63,000. Give or take. He absorbed this information with a single nod. "And you're paying it off on a housekeeper's salary." "I don't have much choice." "There's always a choice." He moved to the window, stared out at the darkening skyline. You could have declared bankruptcy, walked away from the debt. That's not who I am. No. He glanced back at me. It's not. You honor your obligations, even when they're destroying you. That's rare. Before I could respond, Destiny appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain. Sorry to interrupt. The housekeeper said I should set up in the room next to Maya's. Yes. Jae-won straightened. Both of you will stay tonight. Tomorrow we'll reassess the situation. Destiny looked at me, eyebrows raised in silent question. I gave her a tiny nod, and she disappeared down the hallway. I should go, I said. Let you work. One more thing. Jae-won crossed to his desk, wrote something on a notepad, tore off the sheet, and handed it to me. A phone number in bold, precise handwriting. My direct line. If anything happens, anything, you call me immediately. Nothing's going to happen. Your building is practically a fortress. Nevertheless, he closed my fingers around the paper. Keep it with you. His hand lingered on mine for half a second too long, warm and solid, before he released me and stepped back. The brief contact left my skin tingling. Thank you, I managed. Don't thank me yet. The night isn't over. I left him there, standing in his study surrounded by evidence of the violence he was planning, and climbed the stairs to the guest room where Destiny waited. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a careful hug, mindful of my injuries. This is insane, she whispered. I know. He's going after them. For you. I know. Maya, I know, Destiny. I know what he is. I know what he's going to do. I pulled back, met her worried gaze, and I can't bring myself to feel bad about it. That admission hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us wanted to voice. Destiny helped me out of my work clothes, gasped when she saw the full extent of the bruising across my ribs and back. She didn't say anything, just grabbed pajamas from the dresser, silk, expensive, left by some previous guest, and helped me dress like I was made of glass. We sat together on the massive bed, and I told her everything. The attack, Jae-won's reaction, Sunho's investigation, what I suspected was happening. She listened without interruption, processing it all with the same pragmatic calm she brought to everything. So what happens now, she finally asked. I thought about Jae-won's cold fury, Sunho's efficient violence, the carefully controlled power that ran through this building like electricity through wires. Thought about how I should be terrified, but instead felt something closer to relief. Now, I said, we wait. Through the window, night had fully fallen. Somewhere in the city, men with guns were hunting the people who'd hurt me, and I was lying in silk pajamas in a penthouse, protected by someone who commanded armies with a whisper. The world had shifted on its axis in the span of a single afternoon, and I suspected it would never quite settle back into place. Sleep refused to come. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at shadows that danced across the ceiling, listening to Destiny's steady breathing from the adjacent room. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the footage again. Grainy images of myself being cornered, attacked, left bleeding in the rain. My ribs throbbed with each breath, a metronome of pain keeping time with my racing thoughts. Around 2 a.m, I heard it. Voices, low and urgent, drifting up from somewhere below. Then the distinct sound of a heavy door closing. Not slamming. Controlled. Deliberate. I should have stayed in bed. Should have pulled the covers over my head and pretended I heard nothing. Instead, I found myself padding barefoot across the plush carpet, easing the bedroom, door open with careful silence. The hallway stretched before me, illuminated by subtle floor lighting that cast everything in shades of amber. The voices were coming from Jae-won's study. My heart hammered as I crept down the stairs, each step measured and quiet. I'd cleaned these stairs dozens of times, knew which boards creaked, which sections of railing were loose. Now that knowledge served a different purpose as I descended into the darkened first floor. Light spilled from beneath the study door, a golden line against polished hardwood. I approached it like approaching a wild animal. Slow, cautious, barely breathing. The door stood slightly ajar, just wide enough to see inside if I positioned myself correctly. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. Two men knelt in the center of the room, hands zip-tied behind their backs. I recognized them immediately despite the blood on their faces. The shaved head, the broader build of his companion. The men who'd attacked me. Sun-ho stood to one side, arms crossed, expression carved from granite. Two other men I didn't recognize flanked the doorway, guns visible at their waists. And Jae-won sat in his leather chair, perfectly still, watching the kneeling men with the focused attention of a predator studying prey. I didn't know Mr. Park. The shaved man, Cole, Sun-ho had called him, spoke rapidly, words tumbling over each other. I swear, we didn't know she was yours. Rossi just said to send a message. Make some noise in your territory. We were supposed to rough up a few people, nothing serious. Nothing serious. Jae-won's voice was soft, terrifyingly soft. You put your hands on someone under my protection and call it nothing serious. It was just supposed to be a warning. Show we could reach into your streets whenever we wanted. Cole's eyes darted between Jae-won and Sun-ho, searching for mercy he wouldn't find. We weren't supposed to really hurt anyone bad. Just scare them. Scare them. Jae-won stood slowly, each movement precise and controlled. He crossed to stand directly in front of Cole, looking down at the kneeling man. Tell me something. When you saw her uniform, when you realized she worked in my building, what did you think would happen? We thought, Cole stammered. Rossi said you'd back down, that you were getting soft, that expanding into Brooklyn was making you weak, spreading you too thin. Rossi was wrong. Jae-won crouched, bringing himself eye level with Cole. Do you know what she does here? She cleans. She folds towels. She arranges flowers. She's 28 years old, working 2 shifts to pay off her dead grandmother's medical bills. And you beat her unconscious in the rain for politics. The silence that followed was absolute. Even from my position by the door, I could feel the weight of it, heavy and suffocating. Then Jae-won asked the question, and my breath caught in my throat. Who did this to you? His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more menace than any scream could have. Each word fell like a stone into still water, creating ripples of dread that spread through the room. I did. Cole's voice broke. I did it. Victor held her, but I hit her. I'm sorry, Mr. Park. I'm so sorry. You're sorry. Jae-won didn't move, didn't blink. You're sorry because you got caught. Because you're kneeling here instead of sleeping peacefully in whatever hole you crawled out of. You're sorry because you know what comes next. He stood, turned his back on the kneeling men, and walked to his desk. The casual dismissal was somehow more frightening than any display of rage would have been. Sun-ho. Jae-won's tone shifted to pure business. Take them. Make it clean. I want Rossi to receive a message. But I don't want bodies showing up in the river, creating problems with the harbor police. Understood? Yes, Hyeonnim. Sun-ho gestured to the other men, who moved forward to haul Cole and Victor to their feet. Wait. Cole struggled against the hands gripping his arms. Please, Mr. Park, I have a family. So did she. Jae-won didn't turn around. Her grandmother raised her after her parents died. Her sister works in my kitchen. She has people who love her, people who depend on her, just like you claim to have. The difference is she never put her hands on anyone. She just tried to go home after working a double shift. Take them. I retreated before I could see more, pressing myself against the wall around the corner. Pulse pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it. Footsteps approached, and I held perfectly still as Sun-ho and his men led the prisoners past, moving toward what I assumed was a back exit. Cole was crying now, quiet, desperate sobs that made my stomach twist despite everything. The study door clicked shut. I waited until the footsteps faded completely before creeping back upstairs, my legs shaking so badly I had to grip the railing for support. Back in the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling. I just watched Jae-won Park condemn 2 men to death, calmly, efficiently, with less emotion than I'd use ordering coffee. And the worst part, the part that should have terrified me but instead left me feeling strangely hollow, was that I couldn't bring myself to care. They'd beaten me unconscious, left me bleeding in an alley, and now they would pay for it. I should have felt guilt, horror, some sort of moral revulsion at being complicit in violence. Instead, I felt nothing but a cold sort of satisfaction. What did that say about me? What kind of person watched men being led to their deaths and felt only relief? But then I remembered the rain, the pavement, the way my ribs cracked under their boots. The terror of thinking I might die 3 blocks from home, alone in the dark, because I'd had the misfortune of working in the wrong building. Maybe I wasn't becoming a monster. Maybe I was just finally learning that some people don't deserve mercy. Hours passed. I watched through the window as black SUVs pulled away from the building, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. 3 vehicles moving in formation, carrying men with guns and zip-tied prisoners to whatever fate Jae-won had ordained for them. I wondered if I'd just become an accessory to murder. Wondered if I cared. The sky was beginning to lighten when a soft knock came at my door. I'd thrown on a robe over the borrowed pajamas, and when I opened the door, Jae-won stood there holding 2 cups of tea. He looked tired, the first time I'd ever seen even a hint of weariness in his carefully controlled facade. "Did I wake you?" he asked. I couldn't sleep. He nodded, unsurprised, and held out one of the cups. I took it, our fingers brushing briefly in exchange. The tea was perfect, honey and a hint of ginger, exactly how I liked it. Of course he knew. He knew everything. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped back, letting him enter. He moved to the chair by the window, the same one I'd been occupying for hours, and I perched on the edge of the bed. What happened to them? The question emerged before I could second-guess asking it. Jae-won studied me over the rim of his teacup, dark eyes assessing. They paid for their mistake. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need. His voice was gentle but firm. You don't want details, Maya. Trust me on this. How do you know what I want? Because I've seen that look before. The one you're wearing right now. The one that says you're trying to figure out if you should feel guilty for not feeling guilty. He set his cup on the side table. Don't. Those men made choices. They dealt in violence. They knew the risks. I sipped my tea, letting the warmth seep into my hands, chase away some of the chill that had settled into my bones. I should be afraid of you. Probably. I'm not. I know. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for a moment he looked less like a crime boss and more like just a man carrying heavy burdens. How do you feel? Honestly. My ribs hurt. My face hurts. Everything hurts. I touched my swollen eye gingerly, but safer than I've felt since Thursday night. Satisfaction flickered across his features. There and gone. Good. That's what matters. He stood, crossed the space between us in 2 strides. Let me see. I tilted my face up, and his fingers brushed my jaw, turning my head to catch the early morning light streaming through the window. His touch was careful, professional almost, but there was something else underneath it, something that made my skin tingle and my breath catch. The swelling's gone down a little, he observed, but you need a proper medical evaluation. Dr. Kim is expecting us at 9. I can't afford. I wasn't asking about your finances. His thumb traced the edge of the bruise on my cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. This happened because of me, because you work in my building on my street. That makes it my responsibility. That's not how responsibility works. It is in my world. He withdrew his hand, and I immediately missed the warmth of it. Get dressed. Wear something comfortable. We leave in an hour. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. For what it's worth, he said quietly, you're not just a maid to me. You never were. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with those words echoing in my head and tea growing cold in my hands. Through the window, full daylight was breaking over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere out there, two men who'd hurt me were facing consequences I couldn't let myself imagine. And here I sat in a penthouse that should feel like a cage, but instead felt like sanctuary, drinking tea made exactly how I liked it by a man who commanded death with a whisper. The world had shifted again overnight. And sitting there in borrowed silk pajamas, watching the sun rise over a city full of violence and beauty, I realized I'd shifted with it. Jae-won insisted we leave within the hour, and I didn't have the energy to argue. Destiny helped me dress in jeans and a soft burgundy sweater she'd brought from our apartment, moving around me with careful efficiency while pointedly not mentioning the events of the previous night. We both knew what had happened. Neither of us wanted to say it aloud. The SUV waiting outside was sleek and black, windows tinted dark enough to hide whoever sat inside. Jae-won held back, door open, and I climbed in, biting back a gasp as my ribs protested the movement. He slid in beside me, not across from me, not in the front with a driver, but right there in the back seat, close enough that I could smell pine and something warm like cedarwood. You don't need to come, I said as he closed the door. Just send me with Sung-ho or I'm coming. Final. Absolute. The driver pulled the SUV into traffic with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent years navigating Manhattan streets. Dr. Kim is expecting both of us. The drive should have been awkward. Instead, silence settled between us like something almost comfortable. I watched the city slide past through tinted glass, tried not to think about how much a private medical visit would cost, how many months of payments I'd be adding to my already impossible debt. Stop calculating, Jae-won said without looking at me. I wasn't, you were. Your brow does this thing when you're running numbers. I've seen it when you're organizing the household budget. The SUV turned onto a side street, pulled up to an unassuming brownstone that looked like any other upscale medical practice. But the security at the door, the way they nodded respectfully at Jae-won, suggested this wasn't your average doctor's office. Dr. Kim was Korean, older, with kind eyes and careful hands. He examined me in a private room that smelled of antiseptic and cedar, asking questions in accented English while Jae-won stood by the window, arms crossed, watching everything. 2 fractured ribs, Dr. Kim announced after the x-rays. The 6th and 7th on your left side. Significant bruising to the intercostal muscles. You're lucky they didn't puncture your lung. Lucky. That word again. What's the treatment? I asked. Rest. Compression wrap for support. Pain medication as needed. 6 weeks minimum before you're fully healed. He wrote something on a prescription pad. I'll send someone to check on you weekly. Any increased pain, difficulty breathing, fever, you call immediately. The drive back was quiet. Jae-won carried my prescriptions, refused to let me climb the stairs without his hand at my elbow. When we reached the guest room, he paused at the doorway. I'll have Sung-ho retrieve your things from the apartment, whatever you need. I can't stay here indefinitely. You can and you will, until you're healed. It wasn't a request, and somehow that felt less like captivity and more like being cared for. The first week passed in a haze of pain medication and careful movements. I learned the rhythms of the penthouse from a different perspective, not as staff, but as someone being tended to. Destiny brought meals to my room, elaborate Korean dishes she'd convinced the head cook to let her prepare. Staff I'd worked alongside for months stopped by to check on me, their concern genuine. And Jae-won, he appeared at odd hours. Early morning with tea, made exactly how I preferred it. Late evening to check that I was taking my medication. Once, I woke from a midday nap to find him reading in the chair by my window, as if he'd simply come to keep me company while I slept. "You don't have to babysit me," I said groggily. "I'm not babysitting. I'm working." He gestured to the tablet in his lap. "The view here is better than my study." The view was me. He was watching over me. Something warm unfurled in my chest at the realization. By the second week, I was going stir-crazy. The compression wrap itched. My ribs ached less but still protested sudden movements. And I missed working, the simple satisfaction of making something clean, of imposing order on chaos. "Let me do something," I begged Destiny. "Anything. I'll go insane if I have to watch another episode of that cooking show." She snuck me into the kitchen during off hours. Let me help with simple prep work, peeling vegetables, measuring ingredients, tasks I could do sitting down. It felt like rebellion. It felt like myself. Jae-won found us there one afternoon. Me perched on a stool, methodically chopping scallions while Destiny coached my technique. His expression when he saw me working was complicated, frustration warring with something softer. "Dr. Kim said rest. This is rest. Look, I'm sitting. Maya, I watched you climb these stairs. You gripped the railing like it was the only thing keeping you upright." His dark eyes searched my face. "You're wearing the compression wrap?" "Yes." "Taking the medication?" "Every 6 hours, just like Dr. Kim said." "Good." He retrieved the cloth I'd been using to dust earlier, handed it back. "Light work only. If I catch you doing anything strenuous, I'm sending you home." "Understood." "Understood." But he didn't leave, just stood there, studying me with that intensity that made my pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "How's the pain?" "On a scale of 1 to 10. 4, maybe 5 when I move wrong." "That's better than Saturday." "It's healing." I gestured vaguely toward the stairs. "I should finish. Have you eaten today?" The question caught me off guard. "What?" "Breakfast." "Did you eat anything?" "Coffee. I had coffee." His expression suggested coffee didn't count as food. "Come with me." He led me downstairs to the kitchen, where Destiny was prepping vegetables for lunch. She looked up when we entered, eyebrows rising when she saw Jae-won personally escorting me. "Your sister needs to eat," he told Destiny. "Make sure she does. Regularly. Not just coffee." "Yes, sir," Destiny said, fighting a smile. Jae-won left, and the moment the door swung shut, Destiny rounded on me. "He personally checked if you ate breakfast?" "Apparently." "Maya, he's never done that for anyone. Ever. In 2 years, I've never seen him ask a staff member about their meal schedule. He's just making sure I recover properly, because I got hurt in his territory." "Keep telling yourself that." She pushed a plate of japchae toward me. "Eat, before he comes back and lectures us both." The week that followed established a new pattern I couldn't quite make sense of. Jae-won appeared at odd moments. When I was dusting the library, organizing linens, watering the orchids I'd tended for months without him noticing. Each time he'd pause, ask how I felt, adjust a pillow if he saw me sitting, bring tea prepared exactly how I liked it. Even though I'd never told him my preferences, other staff members noticed. I caught curious glances, heard whispers that stopped when I entered rooms. But no one said anything directly, and I tried to pretend the attention from one of Manhattan's most powerful men was completely normal and not at all making my heart race every time he walked into a room. Sun-ho cornered me one afternoon in Jae-won's study. "He's different with you," Sun-ho said without preamble. I jumped, nearly dropping the towel. "I didn't hear you come in." "That's the idea." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I've known since we were teenagers in Busan. Watched him build this organization from the ground up after his father was killed. He doesn't let people in, doesn't show weakness, doesn't care about the small details of anyone's life unless it serves a strategic purpose." "What's your point?" "My point is he knows how you take your tea. He noticed when you changed the way you organize his books. He personally drove you to the doctor and sat there while you got examined. Sung-ho's expression was unreadable. That's not strategy. That's something else. He's just being responsible. I got hurt because of his business. Sure, keep believing that if it helps you sleep at night. Sun-ho pushed off the doorframe. But when this gets complicated, and it will, remember I warned you. He left before I could respond, and I stood there holding towels and trying to ignore the way my pulse had quickened at his words. Thursday night, a week after the attack, I found myself alone in the library. Jae-won had asked me to organize some new acquisitions he'd received, and I'd been arranging them by author when the sun set and the building quieted around me. My bruises had faded to yellowish shadows, barely visible unless you knew where to look. The swelling around my eye had disappeared entirely, but my ribs still ached when I breathed too deeply, a constant reminder that I wasn't quite healed. I was shelving a leather-bound collection of Korean poetry when I heard footsteps behind me. "You're working late." Jae-won's voice, low and close. I turned, found him standing just inside the doorway, jacket removed, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. The sight of him like that, slightly disheveled, guard partially lowered, did something to my insides that I absolutely shouldn't have been feeling. The library itself felt different at night. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the city lights like mirrors, creating an infinite world of books and shadows. The smell of old paper mixed with the faint trace of his cologne, something warm and cedar dark. "Finishing what you asked me to do," I said, gesturing to the books. "These are beautiful editions. First printings, some of them. My grandfather's collection. He left them to me when he died." Jae-won moved closer, examining the spines I'd arranged. His proximity made the air feel thicker, harder to breathe. "You organized them chronologically within each author. It seemed to make sense. Track the evolution of their work." I was hyper-aware of every inch of space between us, the way it kept shrinking. Most people would have just done alphabetical. I'm not most people. No. His eyes met mine, an intensity in them made my breath catch. "You're not." He reached past me to pull a book from the shelf, a worn volume of Yoon Dongju's poetry. His arm brushed mine, and neither of us moved away. "This one was my grandmother's favorite," he said quietly. "She used to read it to me when I was small, before everything changed." "What changed?" "My father died. I inherited his empire at 22. There wasn't room for poetry anymore." He replaced the book, but his hand lingered on the spine. Until now. The silence stretched between us, charged with something I couldn't name but felt everywhere. In the air, in the narrowing space between our bodies, in the way his gaze dropped briefly to my mouth before returning to my eyes. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, finally, voice rough. "Since that night, since I saw what they did, since I realized you've been here for 8 months, and I'd been too blind to really see you." My throat went dry. "Jae-won, tell me you don't feel it. Tell me I'm imagining this and I'll walk away, leave you alone. But tell me honestly. I should have lied, should have protected both of us from whatever this was. Instead, the truth came out in a whisper. I can't stop thinking about you either." He closed the distance between us in one step, his hand coming up to cup my face with surprising gentleness. His thumb traced the faded shadow of the bruise on my cheekbone. "I'm not a good man, Maya. I do terrible things to maintain power and protect what's mine. You deserve better than what I can offer. Maybe I don't want better. Maybe I want this." The kiss happened like inevitability. Soft at first, questioning, his lips against mine, testing boundaries neither of us had acknowledged existed. When I didn't pull away, when my hands came up to grip his shirt, it deepened. His other hand found my waist, careful to avoid my injured ribs, and I tasted tea and something darker, more dangerous. Heat flooded through me, erasing rational thought. This was Jae-won Park. Crime boss, killer, the man who'd ordered deaths with the same ease most people ordered dinner. And I was kissing him in his library while the city sprawled below us, oblivious to how my world had just tilted on its axis. His phone buzzed violently in his pocket. We broke apart, both breathing hard. He pulled out the device, read the screen, and cursed softly in Korean. I have to go. Senho needs me. But he hesitated, looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. This conversation isn't over. No, I agreed. It's not. He kissed me once more, quick and fierce, then was gone. I stood there for several minutes. Fingers pressed my lips, trying to process what had just happened. When I finally made it back to the guest room I'd been occupying, Destiny was waiting. She took one look at my face and knew. You kissed him. He kissed me. I think. Maybe I kissed him. It was mutual kissing. Oh my God. She pulled me to sit on the bed. Maya, this is insane. I know. I was going to say dangerous, but insane works too. She studied me carefully. Are you okay with this? Because once you start something with a man like Jae-won, there's no going back to being invisible. I thought about his hands on my face, his voice admitting he couldn't stop thinking about me, the way he'd protected me without hesitation, without question, like my safety was worth starting a war over. I don't think I want to be invisible anymore, I admitted. Destiny pulled me into a careful hug, mindful of my ribs. Then hold on tight, because this is going to change everything. Through the window, I could see the city lights spreading toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, Jae-won was handling whatever emergency Sung-ho had called him for, making decisions that would ripple through the criminal underworld, maintaining power through calculated violence and careful strategy. And when he came back, we'd have to figure out what this thing between us meant. How a maid and a crime boss could possibly navigate feelings that defied every logical boundary. But for now, I sat with Destiny in comfortable silence, touching my lips where Jae-won's kiss still burned, and let myself feel something other than pain or fear or exhaustion. I let myself feel wanted. The days following that first kiss blurred into something I'd never experienced before, a secret carved out of stolen moments. Jae-won would find me in empty corridors, pull me into unused rooms, kiss me until my knees weakened and my carefully constructed boundaries dissolved. We talked in hushed voices after everyone else had gone home. Conversations that stretched into early morning hours about everything and nothing. His childhood in Busan before his family immigrated. My grandmother's final months. The weight of inheriting empires neither of us had asked for. My ribs still ached when I moved wrong, a constant reminder that I wasn't fully healed. But the pain was fading, becoming background noise instead of the main event. 3 weeks had passed since the attack, and the bruises had disappeared entirely. Only the fractured rib remained, sensitive but improving. The kitchen had become my refuge during recovery. Destiny and I would cook together late at night after the formal meals were done, and the penthouse was quiet. She taught me Korean dishes, proper kimchi jjigae, the art of perfect bibimbap, while I shared our grandmother's southern recipes. The fusion experiments became legendary among the staff. You know, he ate 3 helpings of your kimchi-colored greens, Destiny told me one evening. Mr. Park, the man who barely touches anything, said it reminded him of something his mother used to make. Comfort food fusion. She grinned. You're cooking your way into his heart, Maya. I threw a dish towel at her, but the warmth in my chest suggested she might be right. Jae-won started appearing in the kitchen during our late-night sessions. At first he claimed he was just getting tea, but soon he was lingering, watching us cook, occasionally asking questions about the dishes. One night he rolled up his sleeves and helped Destiny fold mandu, Korean dumplings, his technique precise and practiced. My grandmother taught me, he explained when he caught my surprised look. Before she died, she said a man who can't cook for himself is no man at all. It was the most personal thing he'd ever shared. I filed it away like a precious secret. The morning routines shifted too. Instead of eating alone in his study, Jae-won started taking breakfast in the kitchen, reading reports while Destiny and I worked around him. Staff whispered about the change. I pretended not to notice how he tracked my movements, how his eyes followed me across the room. "You're different," Sung-ho observed one morning, finding me in the hallway, more relaxed. "I'm healing. That's not what I mean." He studied me with that unreadable expression. "You're not afraid of this place anymore." Not afraid of him. I thought about it. He was right. Somewhere between the pain medication and the late-night cooking sessions and the way Jae-won looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching, the fear had dissolved into something else entirely. Destiny caught us one evening in the kitchen. She'd come back for something she'd forgotten and found me pressed against the counter with Jae-won's mouth on mine, his hands careful on my waist, avoiding the compression wrap I still wore. Oh my God, she breathed. We broke apart. Jae-won didn't look remotely embarrassed, just slightly inconvenienced by the interruption. I felt heat flood my face. "Destiny, no, it's fine. She looked between us, processing. "Okay, this is happening. This is actually happening. Are you upset?" I asked. She studied Jae-won with the same critical eye she'd used to evaluate my boyfriends since we were teenagers. "Are you going to hurt her?" "No. Simple. Absolute. Are you going to get her killed because someone wants to hurt you through her?" I'd burn this city to the ground first. Destiny absorbed this, then nodded once. "Okay then. But Maya, we're talking about this later. Extensively." She left, and Jae-won pulled me back against him, this time gentler. "Your sister is terrifying," he murmured against my hair. "She's protective." "So am I." Sun-ho cornered me 2 days later while I was organizing the study. "He's different because of you. Lighter somehow. I've known him 12 years, and I've never seen him smile like he does when you walk into a room." "Is that a problem?" "Depends. Can you handle what comes with being his weakness?" Sun-ho's expression was serious. "Because that's what you are now, Maya. The thing people will use to hurt him. The leverage. The pressure point. I know what I'm getting into. Do you?" He didn't sound convinced. "This world doesn't do casual. There's no halfway with someone like. You're either all in, or you walk away now before it's too late." "I'm all in." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. He needs someone worth fighting for. Someone who reminds him he's still human underneath all the rest." 3 weeks to the day after I'd been attacked, Jae-won told me to dress nicely for dinner, not wear clothes, something that made statement. I borrowed a dress from Destiny, deep emerald that complemented my dark skin, fitted but not uncomfortable with a compression wrap underneath. Jae-won appeared at my door wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car, his black hair perfectly styled, and those dark eyes heating when they landed on me. "Beautiful," he said simply. The restaurant was elegant Korean, the kind with private rooms and wine lists thicker than novels. We were escorted to a private room in the back, and my stomach dropped when I saw who was already seated. A man in his 50s, heavy-set, with silver threading through his dark hair and calculating eyes. 2 bodyguards flanked him, stone-faced and watchful. This had to be Rossi. The room itself was traditional Korean, low table, cushioned floor seating, paper screens filtering the light. But there was nothing traditional about the tension that crackled between the 2 men as we entered. "Mr. Park." The man stood, offering his hand. Jae-won shook it with the bare minimum of courtesy. "And this must be the young lady who caused all the trouble." "Maya," Jae-won said, his hand finding the small of my back. "This is Vincent Rossi. We're here to establish new boundaries." Rossi's eyes tracked over me with unsettling interest, like he was cataloging weaknesses. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away first. Destiny and I had grown up in Washington Heights. I knew what predators looked like, and I knew how to show them I wasn't prey. Something shifted in Rossi's expression. Respect, maybe. or at least recognition. Please sit. I've taken the liberty of ordering wine. The dinner was a masterclass in veiled threats disguised as polite conversation. Course after course arrived: sashimi, bulgogi, perfectly grilled galbi, while Rossi and Jae-won circled each other with words. Rossi offered compensation for the unfortunate incident, $50,000, he said, as if that price tag could erase what his men had done. I watched his face as he named the figure, saw the calculation there. He was testing, probing, trying to find the price point where Jae-won would cave. Jae-won's refusal was ice cold and absolute. I don't want your money. I want your word. No member of your organization touches anyone connected to me. Not my staff, not my businesses, not the people who live in my territory. You overstep those boundaries again, and we stop pretending this is about diplomacy. That's quite an ultimatum, Mr. Park. It's not an ultimatum. It's a statement of fact. Jae-won set down his chopsticks with precise control. You wanted to test me. See if I'd gone soft. Consider the test concluded. 3 of your operations shut down in 1 weekend. That was restraint. Push me again, and I'll show you what happens when I stop being restrained. I watched Rossi calculate odds, weigh options, measure the man across from him against some internal scale. Whatever he saw must have convinced him, because his shoulders relaxed, just slightly, into acceptance. Rossi's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Understood. Your territory remains yours. Your people remain untouched. Good. Jae-won stood, helping me to my feet. Then we have nothing more to discuss. In the car afterward, I finally released the breath I'd been holding. That was terrifying. That was necessary. Jae-won's hand found mine, lacing our fingers together. He needed to see you're not just staff. He needed to understand what you mean to me. And what do I mean to you? He looked at me then, something raw and unguarded in his expression. Everything I shouldn't want and can't give up. Back at the penthouse, reality settled in. Jae-won explained what Rossi's interest meant. I was now a known weakness, a target anyone wanting to hurt him would identify. He wanted me to move into the penthouse permanently, accept bodyguards. Let him control every movement for my safety. No, the word came out harder than I intended. I'm not becoming a prisoner, Jae-won. I won't live in a gilded cage because your world is dangerous. You think I'm trying to cage you? Frustration bled into his voice. I'm trying to keep you alive. By taking away my choices, by making every decision for me, by protecting what's mine. I'm not property. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and final. I watched him process them, saw the flicker of something. Hurt? Surprise? Cross his features before his expression shuddered. I didn't mean it like that, he said quietly. Then how did you mean it? He ran a hand through his hair, a rare break in his composure. In my world, there are things you protect, things that matter. Family, territory, honor. Things you would die for, kill for. He met my eyes. You're on that list now. Not because I own you, because I care about you more than I care about my own safety. But you can't protect me by controlling me. That's not protection, Jae-won. That's possession. We stood in his study, tension crackling between us like lightning. His hands curled into fists at his sides, jaw tight with the effort of controlling his temper. I'd seen him order men to their deaths with less emotion than he was showing now. Finally, he exhaled. Then what do you suggest? Because doing nothing isn't an option. We compromised. I kept the apartment with destiny, maintained my independence, but accepted discreet security when I went out at night, a driver when I worked late, parameters that made him feel I was protected without making me feel owned. It wasn't a perfect solution. There would be arguments ahead. I could feel them waiting, disagreements about boundaries and safety, and the constant tension between his need to control and my need to be free. But it was a start, a foundation we could build on. I need you to understand something, I said quietly. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. But I need to choose it, not have it forced on me. I understand. He crossed to me, cupped my face with both hands. I'm not used to caring about anyone this much. It makes me irrational. You? Irrational. I smiled despite everything. Shocking. Don't mock me. But his lips twitched, almost a smile. I'm trying to adapt. This is new territory for me. For me too. I leaned into his touch, let myself feel the warmth of his palms against my cheeks. We'll figure it out together. He kissed me then, deep and desperate, like he was trying to convince himself I was real and choosing to stay. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer until no space remained between us. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. Stay with me tonight, he said. Not in the guest room. With me. The request hung between us, waited with everything unspoken. This would change things, would make whatever we were building more real, more permanent, harder to walk away from. I nodded, unable to form words around the want constricting my throat. His bedroom was a revelation, sparse but elegant, dominated by an enormous bed with dark linens. The walls held art I recognized from his grandfather's collection. Traditional Korean landscapes, misty mountains, and twisted pines. A single photograph sat on the nightstand. A woman with Jae-won's eyes holding a young boy. His mother, I realized. Gone now, like so many people in his life. He undressed me slowly, carefully, mindful of the compression wrap I still wore. His fingers traced the fading shadows where bruises had been, the edge of the wrap protecting my healing rib. Each touch was deliberate, reverent, like he was memorizing the geography of my body. You're beautiful, he said quietly. I need you to know that. Not beautiful despite what happened, or beautiful in spite of your scars. Just beautiful. I didn't know how to respond to that. No one had ever looked at me the way he was looking now, like I was something precious, something worthy of protection. Does it still hurt, he asked. Sometimes. When I breathe too deep or move wrong. Then we'll be careful. We were. His hands mapped my body with reverence and restraint, learning what made me gasp, what made me arch into his touch. I traced the tattoos I'd glimpsed before, a dragon across his shoulder blade, Korean script along his ribs, symbols I didn't understand but felt the weight of. His scars told stories he whispered in the dark. A knife fight at 20, a bullet at 24. Burns from a warehouse fire at 27. You've survived so much, I breathed. So have you. He kissed the spot where my bruise had been, then lower, tracing the edge of my wrap. You survived what should have broken you and came back stronger. When he finally moved over me, positioning himself with careful attention to my injury, I felt completely seen, completely known. We moved together slowly, building heat that had nothing to do with rough passion and everything to do with connection, with choice, with two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances and decided the risk was worth it. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, I felt something I hadn't felt since before my grandmother died. Safe. I meant what I said, Jae-won murmured into my hair. I'd burn this city down to keep you safe. I know. I traced circles on his chest, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. That's what scares me, and what makes me feel protected at the same time. Then we'll figure it out together, make rules that work for both of us, build something that doesn't require you to sacrifice who you are. Outside the windows, the city sprawled beneath us, glittering and dangerous and alive. Somewhere out there, Rossi was calculating his next move. Other enemies waited in shadows. The world Jae-won inhabited would always carry risk. But lying there in his bed, his hand gentle on my healing ribs, I realized I'd already made my choice. Not because he'd forced me, not because I had no other options, because for the first time in years, I wanted something more than survival. I wanted this, complicated, dangerous, impossible as it was. And I was willing to fight for it. 6 weeks. That's how long it took for my body to remember what normal felt like. Dr. Kim confirmed it on a Tuesday morning in early December, unwrapping the compression bandage I'd worn like a second skin and pressing carefully along my ribs. "No tenderness?" he asked. "None." Deep breath. I inhaled fully, felt my chest expand without the sharp reminder of fractured bone. "It doesn't hurt." "Good. You're cleared for normal activity. No restrictions." He made notes on his tablet. "The bone has healed completely. You got lucky. Clean break, no complications." Lucky. I suppose that was one way to describe surviving an attack that should have killed me. Jae-won waited in the lobby, and when I emerged, his eyes scanned my face for signs of pain out of habit. "All clear," I said. "Officially healed." Relief crossed his features, there and gone in a heartbeat. "Then we celebrate tonight. Properly." Celebration came in the form of dinner at a quiet French restaurant where the staff knew not to disturb us, and the wine list was older than I was. Jae-won ordered for both of us in flawless French, and I watched him across candlelight, still adjusting to this version of us. Out in public, together, no longer hiding. "I have something for you," he said after dessert arrived. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a single document. Employment contract. Personal assistant to Jae-won Park. Salary that made my breath catch, triple what I'd been making, with benefits that included health insurance I could actually use. "Jae-won, this is fair compensation for your work. You've been managing my schedule, organizing correspondence, handling things that would take me hours." He sipped his wine. "You've earned it." I stared at the numbers, doing rapid math. With this salary, I could pay off the medical debt in 2 years instead of 10. Could afford an apartment that didn't have mold in the bathroom. Could breathe. "There's a signing bonus included in your first paycheck," he added casually. I looked up sharply. "How much?" "Enough to handle any outstanding financial concerns." The medical debt. He was talking about the medical debt. The number that had followed me like a curse for 2 years. That woke me at 3 a.m. in cold sweats, that made every purchase feel like a betrayal. $63,000 of my grandmother's pain, itemized and interest-bearing. My throat tightened. "You can't just, I didn't ask your permission. Consider it a Christmas bonus." His expression dared me to argue. "You work for me. I take care of my people. That's how this works." I thought about all the nights I'd sat at our kitchen table, staring at payment statements, doing impossible math. All the shifts I'd worked until my body screamed. All the dreams I'd deferred. The life I'd put on hold, the constant low-grade terror of knowing one emergency would destroy me. And now, with a single signature, it could all disappear. Why? I asked quietly. "Why do this for me?" "Because you never would have asked. Because you'd carry that weight until it killed you rather than accept help. Because," he paused, something vulnerable flickering across his features. "Because I know what it's like to inherit debt you didn't choose. And you deserve to be free of it." I should have protested, should have maintained some pride about handling my own obligations. Instead, I felt something crack open in my chest. Relief so profound it almost hurt. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep being exactly who you are." The following week, I discovered he'd been telling the truth. My paycheck included a bonus that covered every cent of the $63,000 I'd been drowning under for 2 years. I stared at my bank account, at the zero balance where debt used to live, and cried in Destiny's arms for 20 minutes straight. "He paid off your medical bills," Destiny said, stating the obvious while I soaked her shoulder with tears. "Jae-won Park, crime boss, paid off your dead grandmother's cancer debt." I know. That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard, and also completely insane. I know that too. Our relationship settled into a pattern that felt sustainable. I spent 3 nights a week at the penthouse, 4 at the apartment with Destiny. maintain my own space, my own life, while building something new with Jae-won that didn't require me to disappear into his world completely. He gave me access to his private spaces, his thoughts, his vulnerabilities. I gave him honesty, boundaries, and the kind of devotion that came from choosing him every day rather than being forced into compliance. The underworld noticed. Word spread that Jae-won Park had a woman. Not a mistress, not a plaything, something else entirely. Someone he listened to. Someone who influenced his decisions in ways that made rivals nervous and allies curious. The first test came 2 weeks after the dinner with Rossi. I was in the study organizing Jae-won's schedule when 3 men arrived unannounced. Korean, older, with the rigid posture of men who expected to be obeyed. The eldest began, then stopped when he saw me. His eyes narrowed. "Who is this?" Jae-won didn't look up from his papers. "Maya, my personal assistant. She stays." The men exchanged glances. The silence stretched, charged with something I didn't fully understand. Finally, the eldest nodded, a barely perceptible dip of his head. Whatever test I'd just passed, I'd passed it. After they left, Jae-won explained. "The council, my father's old guard. They've been waiting to see how I handle you. Handle me. You're not Korean. You're not from a connected family. To them, you're an outsider, a liability." He turned to face me. "I just told them you stay. In this world, that means something." "What does it mean?" "That you're under my protection. Formally, anyone who touches you answers to me, and to the entire organization." The weight of it settled over me like a heavy blanket. More challenges followed. A rival boss's wife cornered me at a charity gala, all poisoned smiles and thinly veiled insults about gold diggers and social climbers. A journalist tried to photograph us together outside a restaurant, asking pointed questions about the mysterious black woman seen with the park heir. Old associates of Jae-won's made their disapproval known through sidelong glances and excluded invitations. I weathered it all, partly because Jae-won was always there, his hand at my back, his presence a shield. Partly because destiny reminded me, over late-night ice cream sessions, that the opinions of criminals and socialites didn't define my worth. And partly because, with each challenge faced and survived, I felt myself growing stronger. "You're adapting," Sung-ho observed, finding me coordinating security schedules with easy competence. "Most people in your position would have crumbled by now." "I'm not most people." He almost smiled. "Almost. No, you're not. Chose well." The phrase stuck with me. Chose well. Like I was a strategic decision, a calculated move in a game I was only beginning to understand. But when I brought it up to Jae-won that night, he shook his head. Sung-ho sees everything through the lens of strategy. It's how he was trained. He pulled me closer on the couch, his lips brushing my temple. "I didn't choose you because you were strategic. I chose you because I could not choose you. Because when I try to imagine my life without you in it, everything goes gray." Sung-ho cornered me one afternoon in Jae-won's study. "Rossi's dead." I looked up from the correspondence I'd been organizing. "What?" "Internal war. His nephew made a play for leadership. It got bloody. Rossi didn't survive." Sung-ho leaned against the desk. "His territory is up for grabs. We could expand into Brooklyn, take everything he built." "Does Jae-won know?" "He's the first person I told. After you." Jae-won appeared in the doorway moments later, and Sung-ho repeated the news. I watched Jae-won process the information, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. Territory meant power. Power meant security. It was how this world worked. "No," Jae-won said finally. Sung-ho blinked. "No, we're not expanding. Our current territory is stable, profitable, manageable. Taking Brooklyn would stretch resources and create new enemies." He glanced at me, something passing between us. "I'd rather have what I can protect than grasp for everything I might lose." After Sung-ho left, I crossed to Jae-won. That was because of me. That was because I'm tired of building empires at the expense of having a life. He pulled me against him. You made me realize I can choose differently. Choose sustainability over endless expansion. Choose what matters. And what matters? You. This. Keeping what I have instead of always wanting more. That evening, I had dinner with Destiny at our apartment. Takeout from the Thai place down the street, eaten directly from containers while we sat on our worn couch, the way we'd done 1,000 times before everything changed. The apartment felt different now. Smaller, somehow, but also more precious. This was where we'd built our lives after losing everyone else. Where we'd cried on the kitchen floor after our grandmother's funeral. Where we'd celebrated small victories, a raise, a good tip day, a month where the bills got paid without panic. So, Destiny said, twirling noodles around her fork, "You're really doing this. The crime boss thing." "The crime boss thing," I confirmed. She set down her container, turning to face me fully. "Maya, I need you to be honest with me. Not sister honest, where you protect me from hard truths. Real honest. Okay, do you know what you're getting into? Really know? Because this isn't some romance novel where the dangerous man turns out to have a heart of gold and everything works out fine. This is real. He's done terrible things. He'll probably do more terrible things. And you'll have to live with that. With knowing. With being part of it." I thought about the night I'd watched Cole and Victor being led away. About the cold satisfaction I'd felt. About the way I'd slept better afterward, knowing they'd paid for what they'd done. "I know," I said quietly. "I'm not pretending he's someone he isn't. I'm choosing him anyway." "Why?" "Because he's the first person who's ever made me feel like I matter. Not for what I can do or what I can give, but just for being me. Because when I'm with him, I feel safe. And I haven't felt safe since Grandma got sick." I met her eyes. Because he saw me when I was invisible, Destiny. He looked right at me and decided I was worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth changing his whole world for. Destiny was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Are you happy?" The question was simple, but weighted with everything unsaid. Was I happy despite the danger? Despite the complications? Despite knowing I'd attached myself to someone whose world operated by different rules? "Yes," I said. "Genuinely, surprisingly happy." "And you feel safe?" "Because Maya, if you don't feel safe, I feel safer than I have in years." I set down my container, met her eyes. "I know it sounds crazy. I know what he is, what he does. But Destiny, when I'm with him, I feel protected, seen, like I matter in a way I never have before." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'm happy for you. Worried but happy." She pulled me into a hug. "You deserve to be cared for the way you care for everyone else, even if it comes from an unexpected source. Thank you for supporting this, for not making me choose between you and him. You're my sister. I support you even when you make questionable life choices involving dangerous criminals." She squeezed tighter. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Always." 2 days later, Jae-won woke me before dawn. I'd been sleeping in his bed, wrapped in sheets that smelled like pine in him, and his hand on my shoulder was gentle. "Come with me," he said. I followed him through the quiet penthouse. Both of us barefoot, me still in his t-shirt that fell to mid-thigh. He led me to the terrace, the same one where we'd sat weeks ago, where I'd been wrapped in blankets and healing. Now I stood beside him in the pre-dawn cold, watching the sky lighten at the edges. "I want to show you something," he said, gesturing toward the city spread below us. "This is what I see every morning. Power, territory, an empire my grandfather started and my father built, and I've spent 12 years maintaining. It's beautiful. It's a responsibility." He turned to face me. For years, that's all it was. Duty. Obligation. The weight of 200 families, depending on decisions I made. Then you walked into my life wearing a gray work shirt with bruises you tried to hide. And suddenly the city looked different. My throat tightened. Different how? Worth protecting for different reasons. Not just territory or power, but because it's where you live, where you walk, where we built something impossible that somehow works. The sun broke over the horizon, painting everything gold and rose. I touched my left side where the fracture had been, felt nothing but smooth ribs beneath my skin. 6 weeks ago, every breath had hurt. Now I breathed easily, deeply without fear. Do you ever regret it? Jae-won asked quietly. How we started. The violence, the complications. I thought about Thursday night, 6 weeks ago. The rain, the alley, the fear. Thought about waking up in this penthouse, being seen for the first time in months. The kiss in the library. The way he'd protected me without asking for anything in return. No, I said honestly. I wouldn't change any of it. The attack brought me to you. The violence made you notice me. Everything terrible led to this. That's a dangerous way to think. Maybe. But it's true. I turned to face him fully. We were built on danger, Jae-won. That's our foundation. But we're sustained by choice. By deciding every day that this, whatever this is worth the risk. He cupped my face with both hands, thumbs tracing my cheekbones where bruises used to be. Then he bent to kiss the spot on my left side where the 6th rib had been fractured. A promise made flesh, that he'd protect what was his, honor what we'd built, choose me as deliberately as I'd chosen him. I love you, he said against my skin. I don't say that lightly, but I need you to know. I love you too. The words came easily, naturally. Even though you're complicated and dangerous, and you do terrible things to maintain power. Especially because of that. Maybe a little. The sun climbed higher, warming our skin, chasing away the early morning chill. Somewhere in the city below, people were waking to ordinary days, commuting to ordinary jobs, worried about ordinary problems. They had no idea that 3 floors above them, 2 people who had no business being together were building something extraordinary. What happens now? I asked, watching the light play across his features. Now. He considered the question seriously. Now we live, day by day, choice by choice. We build something that's ours, on our terms, however long that takes. And your world, the violence, the danger, it's not going anywhere. I won't lie to you about that. He turned me to face him, hands gentle on my shoulders. But I can promise you this. I will spend every day making sure you never regret choosing me, that you always feel safe, seen, valued, that you know exactly where you stand. Where do I stand? Right next to me, always. He kissed me again, soft and sweet, a promise sealed in dawnlight. Later that morning, Destiny appeared on the terrace with a tray of tea and pastries, taking in the scene with knowing eyes. You two are disgusting, she announced cheerfully. Absolutely, completely disgusting. Jae-won laughed, actually laughed, a sound I was still learning the shape of, and pulled out a chair for her. The 3 of us sat there as the city came fully awake, eating breakfast on a terrace that overlooked an empire. 2 sisters from Washington Heights and a Korean crime boss, sharing pastries and planning the day ahead like it was the most normal thing in the world. Maybe it was. Maybe this was what normal looked like when you stopped trying to fit into someone else's definition. I've been thinking, Destiny said, pouring tea, about expanding the kitchen menu. More fusion dishes. Maybe teaching some of the other cooks what we've been developing. Jae-won nodded thoughtfully. Draw up a proposal. If it's solid, we'll discuss implementation. My sister beamed. Just like that. She was part of his world too. Not through force or circumstance, but through talent recognized and respected. This was what he did, I realized. He saw people, saw their potential, their value, their worth. And once he saw you, he invested everything in making sure you could grow. We stood together as the city woke beneath us, Two people who'd found each other through impossible circumstances and built something that defied every logical boundary. His world would always carry risk. Mine would always be complicated by association. But standing there in dawnlight, his arms around me, and the city sprawling below, I realized I'd stopped surviving and started living. The medical debt was gone. My body had healed. And I'd found something I never expected in a penthouse I'd only meant to clean. A man who saw me completely and chose me anyway. Some nights I still woke gasping, dreaming of rain and fists and the cold kiss of pavement. On those nights, Jae-won would pull me close without asking questions, his heartbeat steady against my ear, his arms a barrier between me and the shadows. He never made me feel weak for the fear, never suggested I should be over it by now. He simply held me until the shaking stopped and the nightmares receded. That's what love looks like in the dark, I learned. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, though there were plenty of those too, but the small things. The 3 a.m. comfort, the knowing without asking, the acceptance of damage without judgment. Destiny noticed the change in me. "You walk different," she said one morning, watching me move through our apartment. "Like you're not afraid of taking up space anymore." She was right. For years, I'd made myself small, invisible, a ghost in my own life. First to survive our parents' deaths, then to handle our grandmother's illness, then to carry the weight of debt that seemed designed to crush me. But Jae-won had seen me, really seen me, and something about being witnessed so completely had given me permission to exist more fully. "Ready to face the day?" Jae-won asked. I leaned into him, felt his heart beating steady against my back. "With you? Always." Outside the windows, New York sprawled in all its dangerous beauty. A city of secrets and shadows, of power plays and quiet kindnesses. Somewhere in its maze of streets, enemies plotted and allies schemed, and ordinary people lived their ordinary lives, never knowing what happened in penthouses far above their heads. But up here, in this impossible life I'd never planned for, I'd found something worth fighting for. A love that didn't ask me to be less than I was. A man who saw my strength instead of just my survival. A future that felt, for the first time in years, like something worth wanting. The invisible girl wasn't invisible anymore, and she never would be again.